We talk all the shop here during our lunch hour.
You're preserving the skin of the animal.
Okay, I've got a freezer bunch of deer hides, and the it's really hard to like scrape that stuff off with a spoon. Like, any tips?
Use a draw knife. Use a draw knife.
Okay.
Like the handles and the big scraper. You know that tool?
Yeah, we've got one in the garden. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so great. And if you can find like a 2x12 with like rounded edge or a log, like.
Well, I was just using like this railing.
Oh yeah.
I mean, but it's like yeah. I mean, that doesn't have the rounded edges, but maybe part of the setup. You know.
I did a grizzly bear hide when I was in high school. I lived in Alaska, and it's legal to hunt bear there, sort of on a very limited basis. And my father had done the same thing. He'd gotten this bear, and he'd salted it, and he stuck it in a barrel, and he forgot about it for years. And when I found it, when I was cleaning up the garage, he was like, "Oh, let's throw that thing out. I'll never get to it." I broke a rock. I cleaved a rock in half and used that, and I found that worked better than a draw knife or a shovel or various other things, chisels people use sometimes, but I really liked the rock because it had that thicker end and then a thinner end, and so I could hold onto that with both hands. I found that worked really well, but I've also used chisels, a big wide cold chisel. Rather than pushing it, you pull it. Worked really well.
Yeah, I had a bamboo knife that I used the back of, and when I used a draw knife, I like holding it upside down instead, because then there isn't as sharp of an edge that can accidentally like cut through the skin.
That's a great tip. Yeah. I'll try again.
That would be awesome with the draw knife turned up backwards. I love this idea.
Yeah, are you taking off the flesh and the skin, or just the underside? I mean, the fur both sides, or just the membrane layer?
I'd like to just take off the membrane layer, but yeah, I mean, yeah, it was just a failure last time.
Have you tried salt? To salt, I don't know if that's like the meat and that layer of kind of fat that you want to get off. And then I've found with deer hide just to use like a combination of the boning knife and my thumb to really get underneath it and work with gravity to pull it off of the hide. But salt helped so much. Salt dried it up and made it easy to.
So Marley, did you have yours on a board, or it sounds like if you're using gravity, you're actually just manipulating it, kind of like free form? Is that?
We had it put up and stretched out, and we rubbed the salt into it and then let it sit for a while, and then we took it off and laid it over like one of our saws and just pulled, and it was pretty fun. It was a lot of fun.
So much salt, like the salt helps dry and it separates those layers, but it also is an abrasive. Like it'll help with that, just like almost like a sandpaper, just like if you've ever washed dishes with salt.
Yeah. So I'm actually picturing like if it's like tilted like this, you can get more salt into it as it's stretched out. Is that, I mean, because if it's this way while it's stretched, then how are you going to get salt flat?
We laid it down on the board stretch.
Okay. I think I'm part of it might be I'm impatient with setup sometimes, and so it's one of those things where it's like spend all the time on the setup, and then you don't have to spend all the time swearing that you can't get it right. Yeah. Sharp rock.
I found blunt objects work better for me than sharp objects.
Yeah.
Yep.
Any other questions or thoughts with leather type things? Do you want to talk about tanning solutions? There's, I don't know, brains, egg yolks, olive oil. I don't know. Do you want to talk about food? This is our time to share the things.
I just started making my own backpacking food for the first time. I've
Nice.
never gotten into it because it was super intimidating to get all of the caloric balance right when I'm burning that much energy. But I started doing it because there's a national shortage of backpacking food and backpacking and camping equipment because everybody's doing outside things right now. So if anybody has any really awesome backpacking food recipes, I would love tips and advice because I'm a total brand newbie at this.
I got one that's my favorite as of late. Sprouting quinoa. I mean, you can sprout like sprouted sunflower seeds or sprouted other things are great, but particularly quinoa, it gets this sort of savory flavor and turns into like 70 to 90% protein, according to a study that I read. So you sprout quinoa, 3 days, just rinse it with water. You can do it in the fridge. You can do it on the counter. And then you take whatever you have a lot of, carrots, kale, zucchini, anything, cook it or just blend it and mix it with that and dehydrate it with some salt and herbs. It's just like makes this awesome chip, crumbly thing. You can rehydrate it like a pilaf or a mash or mix it with other stuff. It's just a really easy way to take whatever you have and make something that's really healthy for you out of your vegetables and quinoa that you could even buy from like a Washington State farmer if you want to. So really
Our food program stocks quinoa and we have kale in abundance because we have a garden.
Yeah, and another one I've been into lately is taking either homemade yogurt or just raw milk from, there's like a dairy here that always has older milk for super cheap. And anyways, there's a Mongolian food called argol where the milk is just allowed to turn into curds and whey and the curds are dried. So I've taken that and changed it a little bit by having a Greek yogurt that gets dehydrated. And I've mixed in herbs from my garden and a little cayenne. That was my favorite. I did one with a bunch of fruit that I dried last year plus cinnamon. That was okay, but I think I liked the kind of savory, spicy blend more. But, and if you want to do it with other stuff, you could just buy a huge tub of like organic yogurt and mix in stuff and dry it. But
And the yogurt just dries?
It dries.
The yogurt itself just dries.
It sure does. And you can dry it all the way. And that's a yummy, yummy thing.
So curious how you, what do you use to dehydrate it? Do you have like a regular dehydrator or something special for something that's so liquid?
I have an Excalibur dehydrator, so just like an air heat dehydrator, but you could use any dehydrator.
Oh, really?
On a sheet of like parchment or a silicone type base.
Nice.
That worked really well.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And
Yeah, I've been doing salsa leather. It doesn't really dry all the way. It's like fruit leather, but if you pour salsa on those trays and dehydrate it, you get salsa leather.
yeah, that would be yummy. And
Wow.
oh, go
I have a
ahead.
recipe.
Yeah.
I'm down in Peru. Favorite veggies is yacon. You guys know yacon? You can grow it up there.
Yes, you can.
Yeah. And I don't know if you know much about it, but it's actually like a syrup. You can make a syrup. I made a syrup, and it has no calories, and it doesn't spike your glycemic index, so diabetics can have it. And I'm teaching these workshops to these Quechua farmers about different things, and they asked me to come and talk to them, and it was like, well, what do you want to learn about? And they you know, we're doing like composting and trying to transition to organic. But I started telling them about yacon, and they didn't know about that. And one of the farmers said, oh my God, I had so much yacon, I didn't know what to do with it, and I threw it all out. Anyway, but what you do is you peel it, and then you chop it up, add it with water, blend it, put it through a strainer, and then add more water and cook it down for about 3 hours until it gets thick. And it's really good. It tastes like maple syrup, and it has 0 calories. Anyway,
So
Thank you.
I just thought it was funny, Whitey from North America telling him about their plant that's native here.
I heard you could make yacon syrup, but I had no idea if that required like processing and extracting equipment or anything. That's
No, just a blender.
you peel and shred it, and
You peel it and just cut it up, you know, like cube it, and then add water and a blender. And I did a bunch of different installments. And then I put it through, I dumped it through a strainer, And it's kind of weird because this slime that lands on the strainer that it strains out turns green. It almost looks like a green, slimy, mossy algae.
Yeah. So you blend it, strain it, and then reduce it.
Yeah, then add some more water to it just because it has to cook down and thicken.
That's great.
And
Yeah,
you have to cook it for like 2 or 3 hours.
yeah, I tried making it out of some yacon that was grown here in Squim, but I had too much like particulates in it from what I was trying to do. But I didn't follow your process. So thank you so much for sharing that. That's really exciting.
Yeah. No, it's great. They want me to do it with them as one of the workshops. We're gonna do yacon here in Peru.
That's awesome. Thank you, Penny. That's very similar. It's almost exactly the process I use when I make sea berry juice. I've been trying to get my community convinced that we shouldn't be buying imported orange juice from across the country. Sea berry juice.
What juice?
Sea buckthorn berries.
Oh, wow.
And I do exactly that same thing because they have seeds and they have peels, and neither one makes a good juice. And so I just put it in a blender with water and then let it settle and then decant it.
Oh.
Wow.
Hey, Penny, this is Kathy Ging. Remember me from the Bill Mollison workshop in San Francisco, Marin? The
Wow.
Bioneer Conference? Yeah. I've been in Oregon for a long time. But what I want to say is Dr. Alan Capular from peaceseeds.com, he's the one who pretty much introduced the yacon up into the Pacific Northwest.
Oh, cool.
Oh, yeah, and he sells the roots. And he also sells the funny little thing that looks like turmeric that begins with O. Can you help me out with that one?
Begins with O?
Yeah.
Uyuko.
Oka?
Uyuko.
Okay.
Oka.
Uyuko,
Okay.
and then there's Uyuko and Mashua
And Oka.
and Oka.
Oka, that's it. He sells that too. So peaceseeds.com if you want to get the tubers.
Is he still, or he's still with us? That's so cool.
Yeah, and in fact, he's the only guy in the advisory committee, and there's an all-women board of directors of the new organization called ParkerLearningGardens.org. Has, I think, 9 women and 1 man on the board, and the man is John Senquist, who's the co-founder of Rivers Turn Farm on Lanes Turn Road near Eugene, Oregon. So, but he's in the advisory committee, and his daughter is Delana, named after Bob Dylan, because he had 3 daughters, and he wanted to have a son named Dylan. So Delana is the one who can grow 2,000 Meyer lemons in a big plastic greenhouse, and they retail for about $5 a pound.
Oh,
And they
wow.
also grew a few avocados in Oregon and some kumquats and some Satsuma oranges.
Well, here in the Sacred Valley, this is the first time I ever planted a garden where I planted blueberries and avocados and oranges and peaches and apples and
Yep.
plums in the same garden.
Whole spectrum. Amazing.
It's all varieties, I guess.
Yeah.
We'll see if they grow. Well, they will grow.
That's super trippy that they all grow in the same place.
I was shocked about the blueberries.
Somebody earlier was talking about analogous locations and like guilds and plant matrices that are that work in different places. And I know that Peru has an analogy to the Pacific Northwest, and so we can grow a lot of those wonderful Peruvian crops. And I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, like the golden berry or Inca berry. They call it aguamate here. It's like it looks like a little, I don't know, I'm drawing a blank, like you put in salsa. Tomatillo. Looks like a tomatillo. It has like a little skin on it, but it's orange. It's a superfood.
That's what they call ground cherries?
Inca berry.
Ground cherry.
Ground cherry, is that the same thing?
What's it? Ground cherries? Yeah. It just grows everywhere here. And the people had no idea, like, part of what I'm a voice for is helping people get perspective of what's outside of their zone. Because many people have never left the mountain,
We planted a bunch of ground cherries and they self-sow prolifically, which is cool. but all of the ones that self-sowed in our garden didn't ripen before it got cold and moldy and wet.
Yeah, I think it's a varietal thing. You know, there's a lot of different varieties of them, and some of them are better than others. And so that's the trick.
Yeah, there's also something to watch about microclimates. Like where I lived in Port Angeles for a while was awesome at growing tomatoes, but here in Squim, just because there's tree cover close to a lot of the place where I can garden, it's hard to get a small basket of tomatoes, where before I used to have like 10 5-gallon buckets of tomatoes, and it's still, you know, not very far away at all. It's just, and it's even hotter in Squim. It's just because there's afternoon shade here and there wasn't where I was.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We can do ground cherries or Inca berries if we start them in the greenhouse earlier. But we would really love, we naturalize as many things as we can. We've got parsnips and kale and everything naturalized in the garden, and we'd love to have those not have to be started ahead of time, but they don't ripen, they don't fruit enough.
Right.
Well, I wonder, oh yeah, they don't ripe. Yeah, and it's actually, there's contraindications if you eat them unripe. You're not supposed to eat them unless they're really ripe. Not only that they don't taste good, they're not good for you.
Is there something you can like put around them to help heat them up, or like to help encourage them? Like I know like with some plants, if you put rocks around the base of the plant, it helps keep the roots warmer and think, you know, reflective heat and things like that. I don't know if that would work for ground cherries.
A wall of water.
Oh, go ahead.
A wall of water might work, but then we'd have to find all the plants wherever they went.
No, they have a really long dry season here, and they do really well. It's not the water, and it gets really hot here. But also, I grew them in Bolinas, and north of San Francisco, where you know we could barely grow a tomato to save our life because we get so much.
Oh yeah.
But the ground cherries did great. So weird.
Penny, what are the contraindications of eating them ground cherries green? I've been enjoying the yellower and the oranger, the sweeter they are, but I've experimented with some of the ones with a bit green. I figured they were like tomatillos.
So Kathy was just asking me if I'm living permanently in Peru. I'm not. I came here in March to do some work here, and then I got sequestered, and they've closed the borders indefinitely. So, and it's fun. I love it. It's great. I put my virtual background of Morai. I'm going to talk about that in my session. Like the Peruvians are amazing, and yeah. But when the borders open, I'll come home. I live in Whidbey Island.
Okay.
So I'm one of you guys, Pacific Northwesters.
You have to be stuck somewhere. That's not too bad.
No, given what a shit show it is going on in the States right now. I'm kind of glad
Exactly. You have citizenship. You might want to stay.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings, but you know what? I do want to go home. It's my home. It's my home.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel the same here. So, but it's great to be here.
You have roots in the Bay Area, right? In Bolinas.
Yeah, that's where I grew up, and then I left. The only place I ever knew, like two years ago, and moved up to Whidbey because I could afford it, and I love it there. My aunt and uncle lived on Vashon. Anyway,
oh, sweet.
I come up as a kid, and it was like the only place in the world I've ever been where I like I could give up Marin County.
Oh my God.
So our son's living in our house, the next generation, and then we're moved on.
Perfect. Similar to trajectory here. I moved from Marin 3 years ago. Up to Port.
Did?
Yeah. Along with my choke cherries and ground cherries and whatever they're called, Incan berries.
Yeah.
Peruvian golden berries. Aguamate.
Yeah, I call it the plant of many names.
Yes. I always get that confused with another one because there's, well, not the little red ones, but there are other little berries that, I don't know, have become so popular. You know, now they dehydrate them and sell them at different markets. But Yeah, my choke cherries did really well in San Rafael. Not so good here.
I'll give it another shout out for Whidbey Island. Hi, Penny.
Hi.
How's
I
it
love
going?
the presentation.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks so much for your offering as well.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Yeah, shout out for Whidbey Island. I grew up on Whidbey Island, and my formative years from age 9 until I left when I was 20 and moved up to Bellingham. But just a bit of history. I was first exposed to not the term permaculture, but the concepts of permaculture through my stepfather, Jerry Dobson, who was the founder of Tilth there on Whidbey Island. And Bruce Dobson joined us the other night on this Zoom platform. His son, so he's kind of my step-grandfather, Jerry Dobson, and he actually appears in the designer's manual in the colored photo section about huckleberries growing out of cedar stumps, I think. There's a picture of Jerry Dobson on there. And I worked with him as a kid. We had a free school, and we would go around to different farms, and basically, I mean, it was totally free school. Like, we would work, chop wood, and they would teach us things. Or, you know, there was no monetary exchange. It was all energy exchange. So that was, you know, when I was a young teenager, being exposed to these concepts. So there's a lot of forward thinker people there on Whidbey Island, artists, entrepreneurs, community activists, everything. And it's such amazing. We're talking about nucleuses and seeds and how those can grow out into the community. And I definitely consider Whidbey Island one of those spots, along with San Juan's and these other communities that realize what it's like to be in a community.
Yeah, Sego Jackson is there, and he started Permaculture Institute of North America, the first iteration, and hosted Bill Mollison. I kept thinking it was the first permaculture workshop with Bill, but he keeps saying it's not, and he must be right. But it's me. Then it's maybe the second one.
Yeah.
On Whidbey Island at Sego's place.
Right. I wonder if that was the same time he visited Jerry's farm. Jerry Dobson, they're up on off of Campbell Road by Max Welton, and had an amazing integrated farm scene going there. And that's what was pictured in the designer's manual.
Yeah, you know, actually, I saw that picture, and it really inspired me. I thought, you can do blueberries, and you can do raspberries.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I was looking at the chat, and Sylvan, if you could post that recipe in there for you zucchini, that would be awesome. And and I had a question about the ground cherries. It's only the ones that aren't ripe, right? If they're ripe, you can eat them raw.
Totally. Yeah, since I've been here, I've been researching Andean crops, and I have like 17 pages right now.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a really good book called Lost Crops of the Inca, and you can get it online for free. And I was mining that book and then doing other research, but somewhere, it was either there or online, that I saw that there's something that's not good to eat unripe ground cherries, but when they're ripe, they're a superfood.
Yeah, Penny, I have a special request while you're in Peru. I heard I think it was in something about seed and just how many varieties of seed are being lost. And I know that in Peru there were so many varieties of like quinoa that are being just disappearing because of the commercialization. And if it at all flows within your life, if there are any like people who have varieties of quinoa that they're keeping alive, I would try to grow them here or ask other commercial, like small farms on the Olympic Peninsula to grow them so that we can help keep those strains alive in the face of, I don't know, uncertain future. Who knows what's going to happen anywhere? And we're a totally different ecosystem that maybe can keep those strains adapting so we can keep those, you know.
Yeah, I'll see. I've been in lockdown.
Yeah. I don't know if your circles are people who grow quinoa, but if it is.
Oh yeah. Yeah. They're mostly, but the thing is yeah, you're right. I mean, it's actually a very long story, maybe for another time, about what's happened here historically, particularly in the Sacred Valley.
Yeah.
To make a long story short, they were in an agricultural revolution from 1940 until 1970. And the haciendas locked up all of the land and the water. And then revolution happened and they got the land back, but they didn't really know how to use the land. But guess who came along to help them figure it out? Monsanto. And the Green Revolution was when the people that here got their land. So this is what they were taught, to use chemicals.
Yeah.
Now we're trying to reverse that process, and that's what these workshops are. That I'm, like all these farmers with their kids. Anybody ever composted? No.
Oh,
So
wow.
I'm doing, but it's been a 5-year thing. It's not just me landing here. I've been coming back and forth here for five years, and yeah, and so that a lot of the diversity is lost. That said, in Lima, there's like potato. They have like a whole genome preservation place that they are preserving all the potatoes and the quinoa and whatnot.
That's
but
right.
They're very protective of it.
Yeah, I believe it.
Let it go, because they I don't know, maybe they're afraid somebody will take it and patent it or steal it or something,
It's a legitimate fear.
Yeah. But I am going to try to get some potato seeds and bring them back, because there's a lot of diversity there. For have you ever seen a potato seed? Has anybody ever seen a potato seed?
Like from a potato flower?
Yeah.
Little bit in the garden when I didn't harvest my potatoes very early.
Did you get the fruit?
Yeah, it's like a little, I don't know if it was fully mature, but it was like a little, it almost looks like it's like a little ball, right?
It was like a little tomato. Yeah.
Baby tomato.
I haven't tried growing them from seed though. It was like a novelty that I was like, wow, that's cool. But
yeah, I know. Well, my first permaculture class, one of the elders brought some potato fruit, and I just went, my God, this is amazing. Everybody's like, really? You've never seen this? Never seen one.
Now, the question is, how are you going to get through customs? And I got out of Panama this past December with some seeds from like trees from my childhood. And I just spread them out through my baggage, and they just found one small place in my baggage, and they found it like, I found it. I was like, yeah, oh, I'm not supposed to bring this? Oh, you can have it. They closed my bag, and the rest of the bag was full of seeds too. So, yeah.
Yeah, I smuggled
Probably
in
shouldn't be saying this on recorded
worth of
video,
seeds.
but whatever.
Yeah.
There's a
All of us
couple
have
stories.
Seeds.
Couple stories of smuggling seeds. I heard a story of Sepp Holzer bringing some of his perennial corn grain, which is like a perennial rye triticale wheat kind of hybrid or cross, as granola. He just had a bag of granola. I'm like, whoops, dump my granola. And then another friend brought some really high grade basket willow back from Ireland in a wet woven basket. He wove a basket out of the willow and kept it moist kind of through the trip and had some stuff in it, and then got home and undid it and planted it. So anyways, to be the stewards.
yeah, last night Teku shared stories of the Africans who were taken in like slave ships, weaving seeds into their hair to keep that diversity alive. And
That was okra, right?
Yeah.
Okra?
Yeah, okra.
Yeah, so that was cool.
And sweet potato, she said.
Was it illegal to bring seeds even back then?
Maybe it was just a having everything taken, so to keep it safe.
Yeah, I think it was just a matter of controlling people. If they can't grow their own food, then you can control their work and
Well, and they weren't allowed to bring any possessions. Like they were just stuffed into a hold. There was no like pack your suitcase.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Pack your suitcase.
Yeah, it's true.
We're going
Yeah.
on a little vacation.
Yeah, it's like so powerful to note how people making sure that they have that, you know, that desire to feed ourselves has made like all this food that we love now in America, yams and okra, is because of that, you know, knowing that life is in the seed. And so, you know, what gratitude for carrying that on here.
You know,
Yeah, I just thought,
I wrote to the International Potato Institute in Apartado, Peru, about 35 years ago, and I got a list of 150 kinds of potatoes. But before we split, because I think the next session's up soon, I just wanted to say, if you find anything that could become part of the Liberated Salad Mix, which is 100 different things mixed in a bowl and then packaged up, I would love to have you let me know what those would be, Penny. And as far as a trail mix, if a person grew the 100 different liberated salad things, and then they dried them and put them all, you would probably have a pretty much a complete protein meal deal. This is one thing Dr. Capular discovered down in our hippie communes in Southern Oregon. He tested these little purple tubes of amino acids and carrots and tomatoes and peppers. And if you mix all these amino acids together, you actually get full protein. And one last thing, my sister-in-law works for the Hippocrates Institute, the worldwide vegan promotion place. And they came back recently. They said, we only need 25 grams of protein a day.
well, I just wanted to say something too, that I just experimented up in Washington. I planted these potatoes from Oikos Nursery. Oh, no, I didn't. Actually, I went to the Goose. I went to the local grocery store, and they had these packaged potatoes in like a little mesh bag, but they had like fingerlings and purple ones and red ones and just a whole bunch of different ones. And they kept sprouting, and when I put them in my pantry before I ate them, so I ended up planting them all out. Meanwhile, I see in the catalog for Oikos Nursery these potatoes that they say are perennial potatoes. They looked exactly like my potatoes. So I thought, I wonder if they're the same potatoes. So my husband was there this spring, James, and he said they all came up. They sat under about, I don't know, 6 inches to a foot of snow a lot of the winter, and then they popped back up again in this spring. Perennial potatoes.
That's right. No, I think that's really exciting. I was trying to copy the chat over and I missed the first part. Where did your perennial potato come from?
Well, where I got them was at the local store on Whidbey Island called The Goose. They sell them in little mesh bags, and they're like this mixture of little small potatoes, like fingerlings and purple ones and stuff. But then I saw a picture in the Oikos Nursery, I put it in the chat, in their catalog of a collection of potatoes that looked exactly like these potatoes. And they said they were perennial, so I planted them, left a bunch in the ground, and sure enough, they sprouted, and the next, I don't know, all the varieties sprouted. I'll find out when I get home what happened.
Cool. And it is time now for our next session, and David Stein is, I can pass the like key facilitator hat to David